What's up, guys? Teddy Goods here, and for all of you who are junkies of early 90s independent wrestling, especially from the New England area, I need to let you guys know about Chop's videos on YouTube. I am a subscriber, and I watch his videos frequently. Tons of N.E.W.H.O.F stuff, Tony Rumble stuff, CWA, Primal Conflict, just all kinds of hidden gems. A few matches of myself early in my career, so check it out. Chop's videos on YouTube. Have a good one, guys.
That night or tomorrow, you might wake up and go, maybe that, So
Yeah.
let me know if anything like that happens. That's all.
Yeah, fucking we'll shoot from the hip.
Most people don't care. I just like saying that because I'm not the type
to harass Rocco. And finally, after probably a couple months, he gave in. He's like, all right, dude, come in, help with the ring. We got a school in this spot. You can come, you can train, but you're not gonna wrestle. You're just gonna train. And that's how it started.
Who was leading the training at that time?
At that time, the first guy to ever offer to work with me was Anthony. Anthony, from that first time I walked into the office, he took a liking to me and my father, and he was like, "I'll train kid. I'll work with the kid." A lot of the other guys kind of like, this kid, tell him to leave, whatever. But at that time, it was Anthony. Another guy that was there at the school was Jose Perez, and Ray Roy, because Ray was training Pierre the Mountie. Ray Roy was training at Kowalski, so he would come back and teach some of the guys. So those were the guys that were there when I first started.
You mentioned taking some time off. I believe it was 2012 or something, but how many times have you taken time off, and what do you do in your time off?
Well, I never really have actual time off. If I take it off from FanFest, I'm always doing something. Like I said, it takes a year or more to plan a FanFest. So say I take a year off, well, I'm still working that entire year in putting together, okay, this is what the lineup is going to be. This is the type of events that we're going to do at this event. This is going to be the menu of food. This is going to be all the questions we ask at the Q&As. This is going to, and it takes forever, all these little things, having to contact all the wrestlers, having to contact all the fans, book the flights, book the hotels, So doing stuff like that. But always stayed busy with YouTube and interviews. Still do that as well. So, but every once in a while, you just have to take a break. You know what I mean? So this break has probably been a blessing in disguise with COVID, because as much as I love the Fan Fest and the Hall of Fame and putting them on, man, it takes years off your life with all the stress. People don't know the stress that goes along with it. They just say, oh, yeah, you put on an event, at a hotel, or you put on an event at the Bright Ridge Club, or, it's just an event. It's like, no, no, it's not. If you only knew all the little detail that went into it, it's overwhelming. And seriously, there have been situations over the years where it's just been so stressful. But I wouldn't trade anything in the world for it. I would do it all over again. You have the ups, you have the downs, and that's how it is. Can't all be, happy all the time.
And I understand you didn't exactly have the traditional wedding night.
No, not at all. And it's funny. Somebody was just telling a story, and basically, same scenario as me. But on my wedding night, I actually ring announced, and my wife was all for it. She's like, no, we need to, we need to do this. It was a unique situation. And it sounds crazy, but I guess it goes with my crazy wrestling life, So literally had our reception and had the wedding, had the reception, went right from the reception to, it was in like Fitchburg, Massachusetts, or Leicester, Massachusetts. It was somewhere out there, probably about an hour away from where we were. And I was still in tux, had a few too many drinks at the reception, I must say. It's a little wobbly at the beginning of the show, trying to get in the ring there, Played it cool, nobody noticed anything, but had a buzz going on, and ring announced an entire N.E.P.W.H.O.F show put on by Kid USA, Jay Gillette. And obviously we knew ahead of time that it was going to be the same date, but we thought it was a unique situation and it would make for a good story and a good memory. And we did it. My wife came along. She's sitting in the crowd. And, Perry Saturn was on the show, Brutus Beefcake, Velvet Sky, bunch of great indie talent. But just a memory I won't forget because, I was just married an hour prior, so or a few hours prior.
That's a crazy story. Not many people can say that, I bet.
No, I don't think so. Until recently, like I said, somebody recently that was in pretty high profile, like WWE or something, said that they, wrestled or something like that on their wedding night. I was like, oh man, okay. I wish I could remember who it was, but I guess I'm not the only one now. So.
Speaking of stories, you got any good road trip stories?
Well, lots of, traditional after the show would be to go to Denny's or Bickford's, and, the camaraderie of having, all the guys together. That was the best part. We were like one big family for a while, traveling from show to show. And, sometimes it's not all the same roster on each show. So you're kind of reuniting every couple months with, other faces and stuff like that. But after the shows, it was traditional during those years anyway, to go to Bickford's or to go to Denny's, because those are the places that were open late. Those are the places that sometimes were open 24 hours. And, we'd order food after the shows. But, man, I looked forward to moments like that. Just, eating with all the people, all your friends after the show, exchanging memories, talking about the show, talking about upcoming shows. Nothing's better than that feeling. You know what I mean? So there have been plenty of times where I was there with the ring crew. So, Mr. Biggs and his wife and Dan Badandi, sometimes Freight Train Dan, Derek Destiny. Sometimes it'd be 5 of us, sometimes it'd be 20 of us, big group. I remember going to a Denny's and Tiny the Terrible and Anthony Rufo came out of the bathroom, and everybody's like, "Oh man, I can't believe you did that!" And Tiny the Terrible went to the, basically took a dump in the urinal, for a lack of a better term. But some of the things you see on the road with some of these guys is pretty insane. But I'm sure Denny's was not thrilled, and that was pretty interesting. There was this other guy. It's funny because Tiny the Terrible actually gave me my name on my persona of Hardcore Joe. One night I'm doing interviews backstage at UCW, and my show was Joe's Hardcore Wrestling Talk Show at that time. And he goes, "Let me tell you something, Hardcore Joe." And I was like, "Whoa, Hardcore Joe." But at that point, I didn't have, it was just Joe Bruen, and everybody started calling me Hardcore Joe. So it was kind of my alias for a while there. But there was another guy who wrestled in Worcester, Mass. He wrestled for Bert Centeno. Joe Stebbins, I believe, is his real name, but he wrestled as Hardcore Joe years later, a couple years later. And some of the other workers were like, "Oh man, he's ripping your name off." I'm like, "Oh, it's okay. I'm not a wrestler. I'm not an active, but he wrestled as Hardcore Joe. So it's kind of funny, two Hardcore Joes at, one time there. But there was a time where he owned a pizza shop in Worcester, and we went back to the shop after the show, and he, it was whatever we wanted for all the boys. So that was a cool outing as well. But I don't know, it was always an adventure. You look forward to the show. You always look forward to what you're going to do after the show, get together and, break some bread. So those are memories. And, we already talked about it, breaking down on the U-Hauls and, different things like that. You never knew what was going to happen. You never knew.
Right. That pretty much cover the traditions you have after the show.
Yeah. Same thing.
All right. I think we've covered quite a bit. You have so many connections. Your phone book, you must be able to like reach the moon with your phone book. You have thick phone book, I bet.
Over the years, yeah, I've gotten so many contacts, obviously working with so many different people. Early on, I would speak to Bobby Rydell all the time when I first got to know him, and we'd talk for hours sometimes on the phone about upcoming events. And he's an agent, and that's how I met him. I must have got his number through somebody else. And every once in a while, he'd give me, somebody's number, and I'd book him for a gig or whatever. I booked Missy Hyatt through him she was one of my H.O.F shows. She was special guest ring announcer for the main event, and she did autographs during intermission, that type of thing. But yeah, my phone book back then, like some of the craziest things were different back then. WWF was still, even though it had entered the Attitude Era, as a company, it wasn't public yet. And it was still a mom and pop company. It's hard to explain, like even Stone Cold on top in 1998, the happenings and the way the company was run behind the scenes, it was still a mom and pop organization where you could email Vince McMahon if you wanted to email Vince McMahon. Now, most people didn't have that contact, but you can't just email Vince McMahon now. It doesn't work like that. Or, you could call, I had the phone number for the Hart House, and I would call the Hart House, not knowing, really what I wanted to even talk about. I called the Hart House. Helen answered the phone one time. She puts me on with Stu, and he's like, "Yeah, hello." And I explained like the whole situation. I've got a talk show. I was a young kid, but I'm like, I got a talk show. Would love to do some interviews or something with you guys. And I didn't really know what to say, but I knew that I wanted to do something with them. And Stu Hart was so gracious. We ended up talking a few times over the years, and you never knew who was going to answer the phone at the Hart House. I talked to Stu multiple times. I talked to Helen. I talked to Georgia, the sister. I talked to Bruce. I talked to Keith. I talked to one of the other sisters. And it was an awesome experience. Just, you felt like you were they made you feel like you were part of the family. And I was actually invited to go to the Hart House and do interviews with the family for my talk show. And I was so young, though, I just didn't even have the means to act upon it. You know, I wasn't allowed to, at 15, 16, to go to Canada, just interview, you know, it wasn't a thing. So it was me inquiring about it and them saying, let's do it. And then unfortunately, I just couldn't do anything about it, but still had some great conversations with them. And many years later, got to appear on Bruce Hart's podcast, talked about Hall of Fame and Pump Up My Fan Fest and stuff like that. So, but the Hart family are very generous people, very down to earth people. Diana Hart, you know, she's worked for me. Jim Neidhart's worked for me. Harry Smith has worked for me. All great people, super down to earth. So had some really cool experiences with them. But another funny phone number that was in my phone book back then when I was, 16, 17 was Vince McMahon. Now, how on earth can you call Vince McMahon? That's not a possibility, especially today. But back then it was so mom and pop. A couple of the guys in the business had Vince McMahon's contact, and they had got it from somebody else, and that person got it from, but nobody was actually calling Vince. They just said, oh, this is Vince McMahon's number if you want it. Nobody knew what to do with it. Like, oh, okay. Well, I called Vince McMahon. So I called Vince on a Sunday, which I was so young, I didn't know the proper protocol for certain things. Obviously over the years you find out, well, you don't talk wrestling on Sundays. Sundays are for, rest. You don't, Sunday was the day that you just you didn't talk business. So I called Vince. Linda McMahon answered. And you would think it would end right there. But no, she puts me through to Vince. And I didn't even know if this was real. They just gave me this number. I'm like, well, that definitely was Linda McMahon. So she puts me through to Vince. Hello. And I'm like, wow. What do I even say as a 16-year-old kid? I got Vince McMahon on the phone. This is my shot, right? I don't know. I have no idea what I'm doing. Just wanted to really call to see if it was even a real number. And I remember explaining something to Vince like, I've got this talk show and, would love to do an interview with you or something. I don't even remember how I worded it now. And Vince said, well, Joe, it's Sunday, Joe. He's like, so call me at the office. Call me at the office. It's a Sunday right now. I was like, no problem at all, but just to even have that experience was just so bizarre, so crazy. But there's been a lot of fun things throughout the years in the wrestling that the wrestling business has given me, that's for sure. And it's so minuscule for me, I'm way down here. I never, did anything, I didn't ring announcements on the big screen or anything like that, but still so many experiences that I would never trade away, seeing all kinds of different things. And I did get to work for the WWF as an extra just for one night. And it was 2002, February, for Monday Night Raw at the Providence Civic Center. And they needed 20 extras for a bar brawl at Tim White's Friendly Tap. And I was actually waiting as a fan, just waiting in the back of the, my buddy Jay said, hey, you want to go to the Providence Civic Center? WWF's coming. You want to go wait in the back, see if some of the guys are, pulling up. And because I was still young at this time, and I said, sure. So I'm waiting there with my buddy Jay. We're kind of seeing the cars pull in. Oh, is that so-and-so? And then I turn and the entire Chaotic Wrestling roster is standing maybe 100 feet away from me with Randy Miller, the owner, kind of like talking to them and directing them. And at this time I had recently, maybe a year before that, did that one gig with Chaotic and have been to many Chaotic shows backstage with, whether I went with the ring crew or whoever it may be. And so I walked up to them. I was like, Jay, I'll be right back. I go walk up to them. I see Randy Miller and I'm kind of in the middle of it. And Randy's like, all right, There's supposed to be 20 of us as extras. We've only got 19 because he's going to stay back. And honestly, I think the person who stayed back was Damian Sandow, who at that time was Aaron the Idol Stevens for Chaotic Wrestling. And so, you know, it was now 19 extras because that Damian Sandow was going to stay back to work a dark match at the arena. So they were short one extra. So Randy Miller looks at me, Joe, you want to do the skit with us? And I didn't even know what it was. And I'm sure, absolutely. I mean, when does that opportunity come up? So he slaps the backstage pass, all access pass, or whatever it was on my chest. I kind of left my buddy Jay hanging. I told him, I was like, Jay, I'm sorry, but I got to go in. I got to see what this is about. You know what I mean? So shortly after that, Jay's like, oh, I completely understand. So we all walked backstage and we're all treated like royalty, like, you know, like we're just part of the show. And they say, help yourself to the buffet. We're eating backstage all day at the buffet. And you see Vince McMahon sitting there with all the referees and Michael Cole. They were all eating together. You had Stone Cold and Deborah eating together at a table. You had Benoit, Jericho, and the Hardys eating together. Then you kind of had the older guys together. It was like Boss Man and Kurt Hennig and Kevin Nash and X-Pac, you know, all eating together. So we sit down, we're eating the buffet. Table right next to me is Short Sleeve Samson, The Undertaker, The Godfather, Kane, and Albert at the table right next to us. And then the 2 or 3 tables that we have are all the Chaotic boys. And we ended up going to the Friendly Tap after that. We filmed a portion of it earlier in the day, and then we filmed the second portion of it live on Raw. And they were able to edit it together so it all looked like one piece. Bruce Pritchard, Brother Love, was the one running the skit. It was Men's Night Out. That was the name of the event at the Friendly Tap. And it ended up being a big brawl between the APA, Farouk and Bradshaw, and Billy and Chuck Palumbo and Billy Gunn. And we had, you know, 5 of us had to wear dresses, and the rest of us just, you know, regular clothing. But they're like, all right, 5 of you are going to be wearing dresses. And I'm like, oh man, I hope that's not me. So I'm kind of laying low as they're, you know, picking out those people, and they picked all 5, and it wasn't me. All right, good. Don't have to wear a dress. And then all of a sudden, one of the guys that was doing the skit had a better idea for himself without the dress. And he wanted to do this like funny thing where he like unbuttons the shirt down and just kind of, you know, played along with it. And so Randy Miller turns to me and says, well, Joe, how about you taking one for the team since you were the last one added today? Why don't you wear the dress? I'm like, man, okay, all right, I'm in, you know, whatever it takes. So I wear the dress. Todd Fat Pants Sinclair, who's now senior official for Ring of Honor, you know, he's wearing a dress next to me. We got our wigs. It was hilarious. Looking back on it, it was so much fun. We had a lot of fun. One Night Stand were there. Edward G. Ecstasy, Ronnie Delicious, Randy Miller was in the skit, Arch Kincaid, Rich Palladino, Anthony Rufo, just a whole host of, you know, Chaotic roster. And it was definitely a good memory to look back on. Dave Hebner ended up paying us back at the arena after the skit. He was in charge of, you know, paying all the boys. We got paid back then in cash, which now that would never happen. We got paid $250 cash, you know, to experience that. I would have done that for nothing, obviously, but on top of that, you get paid. And I remember back then it wasn't digital yet, so it was still being put onto VHS. And when they filmed live, you know, they had to edit that tape because we did part of it earlier in the day. So that VHS tape had a police escort from the Friendly Tap back to the Providence Civic Center so they could do like editing and stuff. So I'll never forget that. A VHS tape gets a police escort, you know, because they had to rush it there. But great experience. It was an awesome experience.
Yeah, that sounds like it. I remember that skit with the APA tearing up the bar.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
All right, I think we're kind of winding it down unless there's anything you can think of that we've missed.
I think that's everything. I think we covered all of it, or maybe biggest regret.
Yeah, that's what I was going to wrap it up with. I just mean any stories or anything that we really missed.
That's everything.
All right. Do you have anything? What would you think is your biggest accomplishment? Like, what's your favorite person you've met? Would that be the WrestleMania trips? Probably the best memory, best thing you've done?
Honestly, my best memory would probably be, would definitely be Howard Finkel. Because like I said, he was my idol as a kid. So finally being able to work with Howard side by side, and for him to ask me, if he could work for the Fan Fest and the Hall of Fame and everything, I'd say that was my number one highlight. Greatest accomplishment in wrestling, obviously, would probably be, I guess, just, that's a tough question. It's a complex question. I would say greatest accomplishment would probably be being able to put smiles on so many faces. It means a lot to a lot of people when you're inducted in the Hall of Fame, or when you're, booked at a fan fest and you don't really get the call that often, or, whatever the scenario may be. It's just been a really cool experience, and, seeing the reactions of people, stuff like that. And just being able to be a part of what I've loved since I was a kid on so many levels, whether it's managing at ringside, or being a promoter, or commentating, or, being an agent, or being a talk show host, a ring announcer. I've just been involved in so many different elements of the business, and it's been awesome. It's been a great ride.
Yeah, it sure has. You've accomplished a lot, been around a lot, done a lot with wrestling in this area. Now, you've met many of your idols and stars. If you could pick one that you haven't been able to meet, who would that be? Dead or alive?
Okay, so I would probably say, two that I've always wanted to meet were Gorilla Monsoon and Andre the Giant. Never got a chance to meet either of them. One of my fondest experiences was Mr. Perfect, Kurt Hennig, being able to meet him, and I'm in an elevator backstage at WCW. The elevator doors are shutting. All of a sudden, a hand goes in the door, pries it open, and it's Mr. Perfect. This was 2000. So he was with WCW at that time. Walks on the elevator with Norman Smiley, Brian Knobbs of the Nasty Boys, and Fit Finley. So the elevator fills up pretty quickly, and it's me and the four of them. Kurt Hennig turns around. He's like right up against my face. He's real close. He goes, "You wrestling me tonight, kid?" I said, "Oh no, I'm not wrestling. No." And he just, gives a good laugh, and kind of gave me a pat on the back. And it was brief, but man, what an experience that was. Mr. Perfect as a kid, like, just one of my favorites growing up. And that was my only interaction with Kurt. I never got to, he passed away young, so he didn't do a lot of the conventions and all that stuff. So that was my one and only experience, seeing Kurt Hennig in person. And I, thankfully got to meet him. And he was just such a nice guy. Had such a big laugh. He's laughing in the elevator, and all the guys start laughing. It was pretty funny. And that skit, when we were eating backstage at the buffet at Raw the day of that skit, Kurt Hennig was there, and I saw him talking to Kevin Nash, who's kind of reuniting with Nash. They hadn't seen each other probably in a while, and he had his towel, his patent, towel in his hand, and he's practicing throwing the towel behind his back and catching it. He just kept doing it over and over while he was talking to Nash. And that was kind of cool to see. He was kind of, always, practicing things like that. He was, probably practice the gum all the time, spits the gum out, So it's kind of cool to see one of his little things backstage like that.
Yeah, it's crazy. I always think, like, they always say Vince raided the AWA the first time with Hogan and Mean Gene and all them. He did it a second time in the late 80s, if you think about it. He took Hennon, Hall, the Midnight, the Rockers. I mean, Vern almost tried a second time to rebuild, and he did it again to him.
Right. And people get mad at, promoters obviously would be furious, if your locker room is being raided, but somebody had to do it. Somebody had to make that move to get to the next level. Because if there was no next level, I feel personally like everybody was kind of on the same playing field, and they would eventually would kind of fizzle out. You needed somebody to make the jump and just go all out, and it was Vince. He's the one that did it, and it had to be done. So, he was stealing talent. I don't know, maybe, but it was a great business move, and somebody had to do it. So,
Right, he's a great businessman. I don't think he stole talent. He did, however, cut throats on TV deals. He kept going and over offering on the TV deals and buying out their time slots. And no matter how much they offered, he kept offering more and bought out all their time slots to kill their TV and stuff. That part he kind of was, yeah, but not the talent part.
yeah.
But if you imagine like 86, 87, 88, if AWA had Hall, Hennon, the Rockers, and you go down the list, the New Midnight Express, they had a bunch of the NWA guys. Wahoo McDaniel was there.
Yep.
There was quite a few good talent there towards the end. They could have almost, saved them possibly.
True. That's true.
That same question. What about just somebody alive? Who alive haven't you got to meet that you would love to?
Alive. Unfortunately, we just lost N.E.P.W.H.O.F. He was somebody that I always wanted to meet, and for whatever reason was never at the events that I was attending. He was announced at a couple events that I was going to, and then would cancel due to a health reason or personal issue, So I never got to meet Dominic, unfortunately. He was a big one on my list. And there aren't many on my list because I've been to so many events now. I've really met just about everybody that's around now. That's a tough one. I mean, if I had to pick one person that's still alive that I haven't met, I guess I would have to say Baron von Raschke. He's another one that was right up there with Dominic. That was on my short list of stars that I haven't met yet. And he's still around, and he's up there in age, but maybe that opportunity will come about where I can meet Baron. That's probably about it. I mean, it's a short list. It's probably 4 or 5 people. And I'm lucky that it is a short list. I've had a lot of experiences and a lot of trips, and I've met so many people that, it's just, I've crossed so many off the list.
Right. You've met so many, it's hard that there isn't many you haven't met that you could.
Right.
I didn't know if it'd be a matter of price or something like Stone Cold Steve Austin or somebody you couldn't afford.
No, guys like that. Like I've met Hogan, Warrior, Sting, Piper, Bret Hart, Michaels, Austin, Tyson. I've met the big names, but it's some of the old school guys that I'm still trying to find. They just don't do a lot of shows.
Yeah, a lot of them like Dennis Condrey and stuff. He would never do them if Cornette didn't drag him out for them.
Right, exactly.
All right, I think all we got left, Joe, is What are your regrets in the wrestling business?
Well, the first regret that comes to mind, I was booked to ring announce a show for Bobby Cruz. Bobby Cruz, who is the ring announcer for Ring of Honor now and has been for many years. He had a show that he was running. I want to say it was UWF or something like that. But he, it was like a spot show. And Ron the Truth Killings was on the card. There were a bunch of talents from all over. And I was booked to be the ring announcer by Bobby. And I couldn't make the show. I let him know in advance that I wouldn't be able to make the show. It was maybe a couple weeks in advance or something. And I don't remember now what the reasoning was. But obviously, knowing me, it was a good reason because I went everywhere. I ring announced for everybody. So whatever it was that came up, it just, prevented me from appearing at that event. But that's always been a regret, not being a part of that show, because I felt like I let Bobby down, and it, was a great organization. He put on some really cool spot shows. It would have been a fun show to be a part of. So that's definitely a big regret.
Was that his first one with K Quick versus Xavier versus Low Key as the main event?
Probably because this was 2001.
Yeah, it
2000.
was in Whitman Hanson, I believe.
Yeah, that was the one. I do regret that. Financially, it's impossible to put a high-profile event together every year. It's not something that, unless I was a millionaire, So, but a regret is not being able to do it every year, because then there's guys that, you work with, you become good friends with some of them, and then they pass away. You know what I mean? And you're like, man, I shouldn't have taken last year off. Could have had one more, event that he could have been a part of or whatever, But I'd say ultimately my biggest regret is not visiting Howard Finkel. When Howard Finkel was ill, he called me here at the house and he said, Joe, I just wanted to let you know. And he was, scheduled to appear at my Fan Fest 2018. And he said, I want to let you know that I have a disease. And he told me what it was. It was like I hadn't heard of it before. It was like a real long name. And it was kind of a combination of dementia and Alzheimer's. And, forgot what it was exactly, but that's the disease that he had. He told me his brain was shrinking every day. So that was Howard's issue. And I had to keep that private. I couldn't tell anybody. And everybody knew I was close to Howard. So everybody and their mother would constantly ask me, what's wrong with Howard? What's wrong with Howard? Even guys in the business, J.J. Dillon, lots of people, they did not know what was wrong with Howard Finkel. I was literally on a short list of maybe 3 people that knew what was wrong, and I couldn't say a word. It was so hard. Everybody asking, it's not hard to not say anything, but hard to avoid the question. I'm like, oh gosh, I can't really say anything. So when I finally got to interview him at Rhode Island Comic Con in 2017, like I said, he was already ill, and I didn't know that. He was keeping that private at that time, and that would be his last, public appearance. And that was November of 2017. So that makes the last time that he worked for me be 2015, the convention center for the Fan Fest. So I regret not having a Fan Fest in 2016 and 17, because 2 more years that I could have had, Howard involved and stuff like that. So you look back at that as a major regret. But Howard got so ill, he got to the point where he was losing his memory, but he was also losing his strength. He had a few falls. There were false reports that he had a stroke because Jerry Lawler mentioned it on a podcast. He didn't have a stroke, but he did have a few falls because of his brain. It was just kind of shorting, I guess you could say, and it would cause him to, his hands were so weak he couldn't even lift the phone. So I could no longer even speak to him on the phone. So he couldn't text, he couldn't talk on the phone. So, I would keep in contact with his girlfriend at the time. And she would kind of keep me filled in, as well as another mutual friend that knew about it. Other than us and maybe one other person, we were the only ones that knew about his health condition and stuff like that. So unfortunately, he worsened more and more. And his girlfriend had said, he would love to see you. You should come out to Connecticut and, come visit him. And I was out of a car at that time. I actually didn't even have a car to get there. And she said, well, maybe you could take the train or something. I guess I just kind of put it off because I said, well, you know what? We'll get it done eventually. You know what I mean? There's, you always think there's going to be a little bit more time. And then Howard passed away. And even though I knew he was ill, he told me on the phone he was given 5 years to live. And I think, he was probably passed away 2 years shy of that or something like that. So I regret not making the effort to go visit him in person. So that would definitely be my biggest regret.
Yeah, that's a hard one. It's always hard when you always think you have more time. You always, we get time. And you don't always do when you think you do. Well, I think that's about it, Joe, unless you think we missed anything you want to bring up?
No, that's everything. Yeah. Should be good. That was good for you.
Yeah, I think it's great. I love doing this. We covered a lot.
This is the Vertebreaker. Click subscribe so you can find out what really happened back in the day with Primal Conflict.
I am the Underground King, SWB, New England Hall of Famer, Test of Strength founder and head coach. Looking for classic wrestling videos featuring New England Hall of Famers and legends? Check out Chop's videos on YouTube.
It's like that everywhere, unfortunately. Like I came across I grew up when I moved back to Puerto Rico. I watched a lot of like the WWC stuff and
I watched that for a while.
And it went from being the hottest thing going to like now it's kind of like here, they're trying to rebuild right now.
I got it up till last year, I think. They must have changed the package or something. I had the package it was on, and then they changed it. Yes. And I don't get AAA or that anymore.
Oh, okay, all right. So
and I liked it. They're still doing blood and guts down there, boy.
Oh yeah, now they fixed. Recently, if you watch the stuff now since Eddie and you got me there. Did I lose you?
Yeah, I got you. You popped off for a second, but you're back.
Okay, so yeah, since Eddie and Epico got released and took over, I know Epico went and did his own thing, but Eddie's involved with WWC and it's getting better.
I seen they turned on each other. And I seen that angle up to a little while after that, and then it went off. So I did see that, and that was pretty good. I was like, oh, they turned it, and he left him bloody. The younger one, Epico, was in a puddle, man. I was like, holy crap.
Yeah.
So I like that stuff. The Brody stuff don't go over too well with me, but other than that, Brody's like my favorite. So
it's a shame, man. It's a shame that shit happened the way it did. You know what I mean? It's just crazy.
But But yeah, it's great for you to be here. Let's just start from the beginning. I'll intro you, and we'll just start. I want to start from like day one. You know how you first found wrestling and became a fan,
It
and
was
we'll go from there.
difficult going to different places because promoters would tell you if you work for that guy, you can't work for me. And I was already getting that from Joe Eugenio, from still going over and being loyal to N.E.W.H.O.F and doing their shows, you know, here and there. So now I added another guy to the list. Now I'm going to NWA New England, and I'm doing his tapings or whatever. And Joe wasn't too happy about that, you know, especially because in the beginning you had to go there and come in second a lot. You know, you go to these tapings, and whether it was a 50-50 match or a squash match or whatever, you would come in second into they had something for you. And I did that a lot in the beginning. So, you know, and it was actually, I'll share this here, I've said it other places. It was Tony Rumble that gave me the name Don Vega. You know, a lot of people don't know this. But when I was working at N.E.W.H.O.F and I was working for Yankee Pro, I was just Punisher. When I started doing those tapings over at Good Times, after a little while, I got to one of the tapings and Scott said, "Hey, Tony wants to have a conversation with you." I thought I was in trouble. He's like, "Come over, kid, let me talk to you." And you know, he said, "You're bilingual. I want a Spanish guy that I can start doing some stuff with, but you need to have a real name. The Punisher thing is too cartoonish. So you can keep it as a nickname, but I got a name for you. You kind of look like D'Lo Brown and a mix of D'Lo Brown and Savio Vega. How about we call you Don the Punisher Vega?" And at the time, I was just glad to be there. I'm like, "Tony, whatever you need, I'll roll with." And since then, I just kept the name. I took it from there, started using it in Yankee Pro, and the rest is history. Tony passed away. I never got that push I was going to get. And I continue on with the name in Yankee and other places.
No kidding. And it was NWA New England then? It wasn't CWA at that point, right? It was NWA
No, at
New
that
England.
point it had turned into NWA New England.
What was anything on Tony Rumble? Like memories? Would that be it, or do you have anything else on Tony Rumble? I'm always interested in hearing about Tony Rumble.
The slight interactions I had with him, he seemed like a pretty likable guy. You know, he was cool to
You mentioned Harley Race. Harley Race was such a badass, man. Most people don't know that, didn't see him till he come to the WWF when he was towards the end of his run, and he was just collecting that paycheck for retirement.
Yeah,
man, he was such a badass, tough man.
Yes, yeah.
Did you see the Bushwhackers when they were down there? They were some crazy.
Yeah, the Bushwhackers were the sheep burgers, Los Pastores in Spanish, and they had some bloodbaths down there, you know, barbed wire matches, rings surrounded by fire. I mean, you name it. Down there was ECW before there was ECW, you know what I mean? It was like wild, crazy matches, bloody matches.
Exactly. That was the first time I ever seen barbed wire. Was in the old After Mags, seeing them and Carlos Colon. I had never seen Carlos Colon wrestle, but I used to be, into the magazines. That's the only way you could follow when I was a kid. And man, this Carlos Colon was the craziest dude I ever seen. That's all I know. His head with Abdul the Butcher and everybody.
Yes. It's funny you bring that up.
I'd never seen barbed wire.
I used to collect those magazines. Sometimes I don't know if it was the Wrestler magazine that had those full-blown color pictures. And I used to get like the bloody photos and take them out and put them in my room and stuff like that. I would get pictures of Carlos Flair all bloody, with blonde hair all bloody. I mean, those are my memories of wrestling back then.
But you're right, and especially them old. They used to do the anniversary shows, right? And like the 87, I think, was a really good one with Wyndham and all them. 88, 86, like around then, man, there wasn't nothing like them. You put them in, it was all guys from up here, but like top tier guys, man.
Yeah, top tier
people
guys,
up here wouldn't even believe what the cards were.
Yeah, it's funny that, a lot of people now, obviously, they know about WWF and them WWE running, the big football stadiums. But in Puerto Rico, they were running, major league stadiums, drawing 40, 50,000 people in these these events, and not only in the anniversary shows, but on a weekly basis, they will go to the Coliseums and jam pack, like tournaments. I think Carlos, in mentioning 80, maybe 85, I'm not sure if it was 84, 85. He did three of the major towns down there, sellouts, and he did it the style they did WrestleMania 2, where he had 4 matches shown on the screen and 4 live ones. So they did it that style down there, and I remember you can look it up. There was 3 sellouts in every place, including the Major League Stadium in Bayamon, which is a huge major league. I think I at this point I think the Montreal team goes there for the summer still.
Wow, that's why it cracks me up when people are like, wrestling was dead. Like Vince made wrestling and Hogan made wrestling. There was no wrestling. There was like they watch the old clips of like studio wrestling on TV, like Memphis and stuff, and they think that's the crowd. They don't realize they didn't televise the big cards. The big cards are on the during the weekdays.
You have to buy you have to buy a ticket. Yeah, they wanted you to buy that ticket. Yeah.
You try to explain to them, no, like even World Class, like I was saying, was drawing 40,000 people with that Flair fight or whatever.
Yes.
Before WrestleMania 1,
Yes. Yeah. All these places were drawing huge crowds, and people were they just need to go back and do a little homework and look for some old footage, and they're gonna find a lot of things they didn't know about pro wrestling and events and draws,
Right. I laugh all the time, like people online, not that I get into it too much, but I laugh at them. And they'll be like, you don't know, you need to go learn. And I'll just laugh like, no, you need to go learn. How about Bill Watson, the Dome shows? Go look at Bill Watson, the Dome shows, when he was drawing, before Vince in 83 or whatever, It's no, there was no wrestling before Hulkamania. It's like it was dying. It was about to close its doors. Like, wrestling was fine before Hulkamania. It just made one company big. That's all it did. It didn't make wrestling as a whole was bigger before WWF, because you had 100 places drawing 5,000 people.
Big house. Yeah. You could go in different territory, and every territory was drawing a good house. In comparison, now it's only one spot or two now with AEW. But yeah, you're right, man. Wrestling was hot, and it was hot in every territory. They had their guys that would draw a crowd,
Even if they were only drawing 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 people, 1,000 people, there was 100, 150 places doing that. So add up the number of crowd. Never mind the TV, how many people are watching. You ever look up the numbers for Memphis? Like they did like 15 years. The numbers there are astronomical. Like 98% of the people in Memphis watch on Saturday mornings for like 10, 12 years straight or something. It's crazy.
This is Kick-Ass Kyle Storm, New England Pro Wrestling Hall of Famer. You like independent wrestling? You like women's wrestling? Hardcore? Shoot interviews? Check out Chop's videos. You'll love what you see.